What happens when two white officers laugh at a black man in a crowded parking lot? They had no idea who they were talking to. And the moment they found out, the whole place changed. It was one of those sticky summer mornings where the air feels thick enough to chew, and the parking lot outside Jefferson's grocery was already shimmering with heat. I wasn't there to cause trouble. I wasn't even planning to talk to anyone. My only mission was to pick up some fresh produce for the community cookout that night. The kind of event where neighbors bring their best dishes, kids run through sprinklers, and folks forget, for a few hours, about the weight of the world. The trunk of my old Buick was open, half full with bags of collard greens, sweet potatoes, and a couple of watermelons I wrestled into the cart myself. That's when I heard it. The low chuckle that wasn't a friendly chuckle. The kind of laugh folks use when they think they're in on a joke at your expense. I turned, slow, and saw them. Two white officers leaning against their cruiser near the far end of the lot, coffee cups in hand, sunglasses on, and grins that didn't match the heat. One nudged the other with his elbow and said loud enough for me to hear, "Guess some folks don't mind showing up early to load up on free food." They laughed like it was the cleverest thing they'd said all week. I felt my jaw tighten. I'd been called worse in my 70 years, but something about the way they leaned there, relaxed, owning the space, as if the asphalt itself answered to them, made the air heavier. I closed the trunk, walked toward my driver's side door, and that's when one of them called out, "Hey, sir, got a minute?" His tone wasn't really a question. It was the kind of voice that expected you to stop, no matter where you were headed. I took a breath. "What's the problem, officer?" The taller one, name tag read Danvers, smirked. "No problem. Just curious what you've got in the trunk." I looked back at my Buick. "Groceries? You want a potato? Or maybe you just don't trust a black man to shop without supervision." That earned me another laugh from his partner, a stockier guy with the kind of smirk that made you want to wash your hands after shaking his. "Whoa, whoa, nobody's accusing you of anything," he said. "It's just, you fit the description." Now, I've been fitting the description my whole life. The description of what? That's always the question. "Of what, exactly?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Danvers shrugged. We had a report of a suspicious male hanging around vehicles. Older, wearing a hat, loading items into a car. I pointed to my hat, a worn but clean Panama. Then to the grocery bags. "That's me, all right, suspiciously supporting my neighborhood with home cooking." They didn't laugh this time. Instead, Danvers took a slow sip of his coffee, then tossed the cup in the cruiser's open window. "Mind if we take a quick look?" "Yes," I said. "I do mind." And that's when the laughter turned into something colder. The partner stepped forward, one hand resting on his belt. "Why not? Got something you don't want us to see?" I smiled, but there was no humor in it. Only my dignity. And I'd like to keep what's left of it intact. Around us, the parking lot wasn't as empty as it had been. A few shoppers were loading cars, a mother was buckling her kid into a booster seat, and I could feel their eyes flick between me and the uniforms. I knew that look, curiosity mixed with fear. The kind that says, "I want to see what happens, but I hope it's not me next." Danvers took a step closer, close enough that I could see the faint creases around his eyes behind the sunglasses. "Let's make it simple. Pop the trunk." I didn't move. "You already saw what's in there." "Then prove it." I heard the words, but what I really heard was the message underneath. "We can make this hard on you if we feel like it." I leaned against my car door, folding my arms. "Tell you what, officer, you show me the warrant, I'll show you the collard greens." That was the moment their smiles broke. The laughter was gone now, replaced with a tension that hummed in the air between us. And I knew this was about to turn into something much bigger than groceries. We've only just started this story, but trust me, it's about to get a whole lot more intense. Stay with me to see what happens when the pressure turns up and the truth starts creeping into the open. The silence after my last sentence hung in the heat like a weight. Danvers shifted his stance, not enough to look aggressive, but enough for anyone with eyes to notice he was squaring himself. His partner, the stocky one, I caught his name tag this time, Briggs, tilted his head the way a man does when he's sizing up the space between you and him. "Sir," Briggs said, voice tighter now, "this can go easy, or it can go hard. All you gotta do is cooperate." I didn't flinch. Cooperation's a two-way street. I told you what's in my trunk. You've got no reason to see more. Danvers's mouth curled into that half-smile again, but it wasn't the friendly kind. More like a cat watching a mouse pretend it can't be caught. "You know," he said, "people who don't have anything to hide usually don't get this defensive." I let out a dry chuckle. "And people with nothing to prove usually don't go picking fights in grocery store parking lots." That one hit. I saw it in the way his jaw set a fraction tighter. But instead of answering me, he took a step to the side, giving himself a better angle. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the audience. Because by now, we had one. A man pushing a cart full of bottled water had stopped about 15 feet away, pretending to check his phone, but not leaving. The mother who'd been strapping her child in was now standing outside her minivan, door half closed, eyes locked on us. From the far side of the lot, a teenager on a bike rolled closer, phone in hand, camera lens already catching the sunlight. This was how these things started in the modern world. Not with an official press release, but with a shaky clip on social media that could get 1 million views before the shift was over. Briggs noticed the teenager too. His eyes flicked toward him, then back to me. "Cameras don't always show the full story," he muttered. I raised an eyebrow. "Depends on what story you're trying to tell." Danvers's radio crackled. A burst of static, and a woman's voice calling a code I didn't recognize. He didn't respond. He was locked on me now, and I could tell in his head this was no longer about a trunk. This was about making sure he didn't walk back to his cruiser, feeling like he'd been outmatched. "Step away from the car," Danvers said. "Lower now, but with a steel edge." I stayed put. "You planning to search me too, or is the trunk enough for your curiosity?" That did it. Briggs took one step closer, now less than arm's length away. "You keep running your mouth, and this is going to be more than curiosity." I met his gaze and didn't blink. "You sure you want to finish that sentence?" Somewhere behind us, I heard a voice call out, "Leave the man alone!" It was the woman from the minivan. She had her phone up now, too, recording steady, both hands braced like she'd done this before. Her voice carried over the lot. "He's not bothering anybody." Danvers didn't turn to her. He just said, "Ma'am, please step back." She didn't. "Not until you stop harassing him." The teen on the bike edged closer, his camera now angled high, catching all three of us in the frame. I could feel the energy shift. The crowd wasn't just watching now, it was choosing sides. Briggs must have felt it too, because his tone changed. Less threat, more performance. "Sir, if you'd just cooperate, we could clear this up in 2 minutes." I gave him a long look. "That's the problem, officer. 2 minutes of my time for no reason turns into 2 hours, 2 days, and sometimes—" I let the sentence hang. I didn't need to finish it. The history between men who looked like me and men dressed like him filled the air. Danvers exhaled hard through his nose, then reached for the trunk latch himself. That's when I stepped forward, just enough to make him pause. Touch my car without cause, and you're not just gonna have a crowd. You're gonna have a case. The lot went quiet again. Even the cicadas seemed to cut their song. And then, more voices. From behind me, an older man in a faded ball cap called out, "I know him. That's Mr. Lewis. He's been running the food drive for 20 years. Heads turned. A couple more people nodded, murmuring. The spell of authority the officers had been leaning on was starting to crack. Danvers straightened, scanning the faces now, realizing this wasn't just a 2-on-1 anymore. This was turning into him versus the neighborhood. His jaw flexed. "Sir, I'm giving you one last chance." "That's enough," a new voice cut in. It came from the far end of the lot, deep and even, carrying a weight that made both officers glance over. A woman in plain clothes, denim jacket, hair pulled back, walking with the calm of someone who didn't need to raise her voice to be heard, was crossing toward us. I didn't know her, but I could see by the way Danvers' posture shifted that he did. "Detective," he said, the word tight. She didn't answer him. She looked at me. "Everything all right here?" I nodded slowly. "Wasn't. But it might be now." Briggs muttered something under his breath, but Danvers stayed silent. The detective's eyes moved between them, then to the crowd. Her gaze lingered on the phones, the cameras, the set jaws. She turned back to the officers. "You two are dismissed. Now." They hesitated, and for a heartbeat I thought they'd argue. But the moment passed. Briggs stepped back. Danvers gave me one last unreadable look, and they walked toward their cruiser. I didn't move until the doors shut, and the engine turned over. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't need to. The air had shifted again, but this time it was heavier in a different way. Like everyone knew this wasn't the end of it. Not here. Not with men like that. We're right on the edge now. The moment you've been waiting for, the turn that changes everything, is coming. And when it hits, it won't just put those officers in their place. It'll leave everyone in that parking lot stunned. The detective didn't leave right away. She stood there for a moment, scanning me like she was measuring the weight of the situation. Then she took a single step closer, voice low enough that only I could hear. "They didn't know who you were, did they?" I tilted my head. Would it have mattered? She gave a small smile, not of amusement, but recognition. "It's about to." By then, the crowd had settled into that restless murmur, the sound of people both satisfied and unsatisfied. Satisfied that the two officers had backed off, unsatisfied that they'd been there in the first place. The teenager with the phone was still recording, now circling a bit to keep both me and the detective in frame. "You mind if I address them?" I asked her. She raised an eyebrow. "You don't need my permission." "No," I said, "but it's nice to be polite when you can." I stepped forward, just enough for my voice to carry. "For those of you who don't know me, my name is Harold Lewis." A few heads nodded. The older man in the ball cap muttered, "Knew it." But most faces stayed blank. I reached into my pocket, slow, and pulled out a worn leather badge case. The kind you don't flash, unless you mean it. When I flipped it open, the sun caught the gold shield inside. Gasps. Quiet. But they were there. "This," I said, holding it up so even the cameras could catch it, "is my federal identification. I served as a special agent with the Department of Justice for 35 years. Organized crime, civil rights investigations, corruption cases. And yes," I looked directly toward the cruiser where Danvers and Briggs sat watching, "I've spent more hours testifying against dirty officers than most folks spend watching TV in a year." The murmurs surged. The woman from the minivan shook her head, muttering, Lord, have mercy, I went on. I retired 7 years ago. These days, I run the food drive over at the community center. That's why I was here today, to feed people, not to get fed to someone's ego. I let the words hang long enough for the phones to soak them in. Then I turned slightly toward the detective. And since we're all learning things today, let me say this: respect is not optional. It's not a favor you hand out based on skin color or what you think you know about someone. It's the baseline for doing your job without becoming the story. Somewhere in the crowd, someone clapped. Just once. Then another joined, and another. It built slow and steady until the whole parking lot was pulsing with it. Applause not just for me, but for the idea that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't going to slide back into silence. The detective waited for the noise to fade, then said to the crowd, "Mr. Lewis is right. We hold ourselves to a standard, and when we fail, we face it." Her words were simple, but they landed like stones in a still pond. Danvers and Briggs didn't get out of their cruiser again. They just sat there, faces unreadable, until the detective walked over and spoke through the open window. I couldn't hear what she said, but whatever it was had both men looking straight ahead, hands tight on their knees. When she came back, she nodded to me. "They'll be filing a report. And yes, it's going on record." I nodded back. "Good. Paper's the only thing that remembers longer than people." The crowd began to disperse. Groceries to buy, kids to wrangle, lives to get back to. The teenager on the bike rolled past me, phone still in hand. "This is going online tonight," he said, grinning. "They're not going to like it." I smiled, just a little. "They don't have to." Back at my Buick, I reopened the trunk, rearranged the bags like I'd meant to all along. The collard greens were still crisp, the sweet potatoes untouched. I shut it gently, like none of the last 30 minutes had happened. But they had. And I knew. So did every single person who'd been here to see it. As I slid into the driver's seat, Mrs. Thompson from the church walked by and tapped the window. I rolled it down. "You handled that with grace, Harold," she said. I shrugged. "Grace is just anger with better manners." She laughed, and for the first time that morning, so did I. And that's how a few laughs in a parking lot turned into a lesson the whole town won't forget. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let them find out exactly who they're dealing with.